So I want to talk a little bit more about the counter-canter and how you can help your horse understand it and how you can prepare for it in different ways and how you can, help your horse overcome certain levels of anxiety when it comes to, moving in the canter lead that is opposite to the direction that they're traveling in. And, when you think about it, all their lives until probably this point, or not that long ago, we've been saying to our horses, when we canter or when we move to the left, we canter to the left. When we move to the right, we canter to the right, right? And we've been not necessarily punishing, but we've been rewarding that behavior. And, so in the horse's mind, that is how canter works with the rider on. And now, one fine day, we're coming to them and saying, now we're going to change that up, and we're going to have you counter the direction that you're moving in. And it's not so much that that's an impossible thing to do, but it is very challenging for the horse that's, number one, habituated not to do that, and number two, who's not equipped in terms of balance and possible connection within his or her body, and then connected to the rider's body, of course, to accomplish this not so easy task. And so what can happen is a number of things in the beginning when you're starting out with these things. You can, either have your horse fall apart in terms of connection, and that usually means either, they might cross canter, they might fall into the trot, they might offer swapping the leads altogether. And all those things are usually connected to, a certain level of anxiety, as I just said, but also not understanding and not being able to, fulfill this request that we're making to them to move, especially on a curved line, to the opposite direction in which they're cantering. So there are ways always that we can help the horse. And one way, of course, is when you get into a rut is to, slow things down and break things down into smaller pieces for the horse. So that you can, pretty much, measure and gather your information, your feedback from your horse and say, oh, here's where they don't quite understand this yet. So we need to go back a step and practice maybe more of your shallow loops or more of, the single loop to X. And when that feels pretty good, then, you go back and say, okay, so now we're going to try perhaps a half circle somewhere on one end or the other of the arena in the counter-canter, coming across the diagonal first. And, you can see again where the holes are, or the holes in understanding, or the holes in, physical ability. And I always think, sometimes you need to get to a point, especially with horses that, for example, like Cooley, have been taught the flying change before, they have ever been properly educated to the counter-canter. You have to just break it up in new and somewhat unexpected ways for them a little bit. And one way is, for example, to, go all the way around the arena, ride in the sitting trot, shoulder in and counter shoulder in. And just that, in a baby trot that is totally unassuming and, very relaxed and rhythmic. You always want to have that foundation in place so that you feel good with your horse about that. And when that is in place, then you say, when you're in a little bit less of a real shoulder in, but maybe in a shoulder 4-like position, canter up to the true canter for just a few strides, back down into, another shoulder 4 or shoulder in-like position with your horse, breathing out. And then you're going to go sitting trot, and then riding counter shoulder in or counter shoulder 4-like. And then from there into your canter up transition. And this is the counter-canter, of course, that I'm talking about from there. And again, just for a few strides, no curves, no corners yet. And this works best when you set the transitions, the up and down transitions up on the long side. And you just continue with that. And then if you have a horse that gets a little bit unsettled, it's your call. You always have to, of course, come from a place of kindness, and you don't want to stress out your horse unduly. But with everything that we're learning, there's a little bit amount of stress, and that's what's important to, sometimes gauge and say, okay, so I think I'm going to stick to my plan, even if it doesn't look and feel quite so great yet, as it does when we start new things. That's just how it is. But I'm going to do my 3 or 4 repetitions of this to each side. Whatever you set out. Maybe you just, with a highly sensitive horse, you might just do 1 or 2 and give a walk break on a long rein. But don't shy away from a little bit of something that might not look so or feel so great, is all I'm saying. Have a plan and try to ride it, and then maybe give the horse a break, change directions and do it to the other side. Or whatever feels good. Sometimes it's just an introduction. And then you stay on that path. You ride this pattern for the next consecutive 3, 4, however many rides you need until it starts to feel smoother and more understood and less of a big deal to your horse. Right? And so that's how you get to the place then from where you can then eventually, advance into corners or half circles in the counter-canter. And everything is still very mild and, nothing forced. But this is the prep work, We're using slowing down, those 3 things. Slowing things down in terms of actual rhythm. Always slower is better. And then also in terms of, what you're actually saying to your horse. Breaking things down into smaller steps is the second part, where if it doesn't work, you just say, okay, let's just have a look at the individual pieces and, address those first before we put them all back together. And then the fourth part is always distraction. And in this case, distraction is shoulder in and counter shoulder in, or, counter shoulder 4 and true shoulder 4 in the sitting trot, to set your horse up just to, with success in mind, because it's only a few strides that you're going to do the canter into each direction and on each lead. And so those 3 things, slowing down, breaking things into smaller pieces, and distraction while setting your horse up for success, that's sort of a overall really good recipe in anything that you're attempting when it's new, right? And above all, always, keep your good humor and, think nothing has been done and won in one day. Always take more breaks and praise your horse as needed. And with that said, we're going to go and show you a little bit of what we're talking about, but I think it's important to cover these things sometimes for a little bit longer and talk about them so that we have our mindset in place. Mindset is one of the most important parts when you want to direct a big, strong and, wonderfully generous creature like the horse. And with that said, we're going to actually ride a little bit. That's what we're talking about. So then we're going to start down the long side here in this little baby trot. Very measured, a few steps off shoulder in steps, nothing heroic. And we're going to straighten him a little bit, going straight here, and then a little bit of counter shoulder in, and that's how you just start out with that. And it's not anything other than easy does it, shoulder in, counter shoulder in. It doesn't really matter where you are on your arena placement. You can do it, the shoulder in through the corners if you like. It's a little bit harder for the horse, but, you get a sense of if they're warmed up enough, and submissiveness to a little bit of counter shoulder in, use the second track, and just think easy does it, nothing forced, nothing too, collected, or depending really on what your horse's level of training is. You can vary all of this, but all I'm saying is try and stay in a small, easy-going place with the trot, so that from here you can go into a small, easy-going canter, and you can, see, I'm going to breathe out here, And I was a little bit in shoulder in mode before I started, and I, in the down transition, stayed in shoulder in mode. So I'm gonna, on this short side here, just steady him. I could feel the anxiety rising in him. So that's why then we're gonna go here, counter, shoulder in, down the long side again, baby trot, easy, easy, almost walk, you know, and then I'm gonna go give the canter depart aid with my left leg, keep him bent and flexed, keep him in that place. There you go, good boy. You know, straighten him, and I go up in the transition as I came, and go down in the transition in even measures. So shoulder in is I sit to the left here, and then my right leg goes forward and on. So left leg is back. I stay seated a little bit to the left, keep him in a little bit in shoulder four-like mode in the canter, down transition. Good boy. Again, steadying on the short side here. Good boy. Very, very slow baby trot. Breathing. You know, counter, shoulder in. Nothing too big, not the angle too big. Everything's just easy going. And then there's my left leg, encouraging him. Keep him looking to the left before I come to the corner. Back down to sitting trot. And we'll do it one more time in each direction. You know, when it goes pretty well, you know, you might add 1 or 2 repetitions just to see that, you know, to let them know that this is really all it is. So, good boy. There you go. Good boy, Minjisa. And I'm not sitting too heavily, just even, nice weight distribution in the saddle, a little bit more emphasis to the left, but I'm not, you know, sitting down, down, down on him. I want to make it, you know, comfortable for him. So here's again, counter, shoulder in, little bit of that inside leg forward and on, and there it is. Just a little bit of that, and breathing out, staying in counter, shoulder in, like frame and formation. And then, you know, that is really all I wanted from him, and I'm pleased with that. So I'm gonna, you know, let him have a little stretch here. So, good boy. And, you know, it might not always look like a whole lot, but it is the beginning of the next step of taking away the anxiety and the worry of the horse that, you know, might anticipate the stress of having to navigate, you know, a curve that where they have to bend to the counter, the side that they're traveling in. And we want to make that as, you know, easy and as worry-free for them. And, you know, the next step would be to extend the canter, the counter-canter especially, through the first corner, and then do the trot transition at C or at A, right? Or, you know, you go even a little bit farther if you want, if it goes well, you know, and you slowly but steadily, you know, expand on this concept. But the first part is always rhythm, relaxation, and easy going, good contact, and the horse's mindset, low level of anxiety. If it goes out of hand, you know, you say, okay, let's take a break, or you may decide to work through it. But you will feel it, you know, if things don't go well and you're starting to feel not so good about it, it's probably a good sign to say, hey, let's have a break. And, you know, try it again. These things are, you know, if your shoulder ins and counter shoulder ins aren't working so well yet, then you just go back to that and practice that a little bit. You can see some of my other videos about, you know, how to ride those things. And, you know, after all, enjoy your ride. Always appreciate this gift that we have in our horses, and happy riding. Good boy, Manzusa. Thank you.